mad king refuses to concede, choosing instead to golf, to tweet, and to deny the reality that does not serve him. Yet nothing quite illustrates Trump's delusions and his utter collapse more than what the MAGA campaign was doing the moment Joe Biden was declared the winner over Trump, which was holding a press conference at the Four Seasons. No, not the Four Seasons Hotel, but rather the parking lot of Four Seasons Total Landscaping. That's right. What started on a gold escalator ended in on a drab, obscure strip mall sandwiched between an adult entertainment store called Fantasy Island and a crematorium in Philadelphia, a city crucial to booting Trump out of 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza, all for the purpose of Rudy Giuliani, fresh from that embarrassing Borat appearance, peddling voter fraud lies, standing alongside a self-described GOP poll watcher who, reports say, is a convicted sex offender. I'm sorry, Hollywood, you could not have scripted this any better. And since I'm feeling generous, here's a tip for Rudy or Corey Lewandowski for the next time you book a fancy-sounding hotel chain. The Ritz is also a cracker, and the Tropicana is sometimes a juice. Just saying. Joining me now, Jason Johnson, professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University, and Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. My goal in life is to make Rick Wilson laugh. Let's talk about the absurdity. So here's a fun one. Here's a funny. Fox News is even starting to jump off this ship. The sort of absurdity of the recount that Rudy was going to get from, next door to the, Fantasy Island. Here is Kayleigh McEnany trying to do her thing on Fox, and Fox being like, no.
We want an honest, accurate, lawful count. We want maximum sunlight. We want maximum transparency. We want every legal vote to be counted, and we want every illegal vote to be...
I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging, the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this.
Rick, when Fox News is the voice of reason, your thoughts?
Right. When you've lost Fox News for the Trump cheerleading section, you've lost it all. I mean, that Cavuta's expression was priceless. I want to frame that. It was so like, ooh, he knows he's going to get in trouble. He knows he's going to get yelled at, but he had to do it. I mean, even like the baseline journalistic integrity of any rando, you have to pull that off the air because it's so ludicrous. I mean, look, you got to give her credit. She does it with a straight face for long periods of time, but no one can. Jason, no one can endure that. It's just impossible.
She gives me Harvard shame. Let's go. I mean, we're at the point now where Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are like, these leaders in Georgia are terrible. They don't even know what they're doing. It's like, those are Republicans, right? They're literally like, they should resign. They messed everything up, and why do I have to go on a run? Those are your friends. Like, we're at that point where just the whole thing seems to feel like collapse.
Yeah, Joy, it's not only that the whole thing has collapsed, but it's like everybody's realizing who's not going to respond to their texts no more. Right? Like everybody in the Trump White House is like, wait a minute, you left me on read? What's going on? I thought we were friends. If Fox News is moving off the Trump train and local elected officials are moving off the Trump train, people are realizing now that Trumpism doesn't work anymore. And eventually Trump is going to realize this. The American people have said, hey, you ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. And he's going to have to leave the White House, too. And I think it's going to take a couple of weeks for that to sink in. But these folks don't have as many friends as they thought they did now that they're not running the White House.
But Rick, in a sense, Trumpism does work, right? I mean, it works in the sense that people have a distaste for him personally, but they still want his policies. I mean, we saw in all of these elections, you played in these elections, the Lincoln Project played in these elections. They was like, no, we'll keep Susan Collins. We just don't like Trump. We'll keep Lindsey Graham. Let me play Lindsey Graham, who, and I've said it before, he seems to be auditioning for, like, the role of Strom Thurmond in this movie. Here he is today, and Mitch McConnell with him.
President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
And finally, what I'm going to tell Mitch McConnell today when we get back, if we keep the Senate, we need to do a joint committee in the Senate to analyze mail-in balloting.
Absolutely.
And how it worked in 2020.
I mean, Rick, how far are we from a 24-day filibuster of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act? I mean, this is where a lot of these senators have fallen. So Trumpism works for them.
Trumpism, though, doesn't scale all the time. I mean, it did end up blowing Cory Gardner and Martha McSally out this year, and we're still waiting on the count in Alaska. But it is going to be something that in Georgia, I think, is going to be a big story. These people are all trying to pretend the reality of the election doesn't exist. They want to retroactively undo it. They want to pretend that there's nothing there. I think it's absurd, and I think the diminishing returns of supporting Trump are going to become apparent in the coming days and weeks, and you will see more of these guys creep back into the tall grass.
Yeah, I mean, you know Georgia better than most people I know, Jason Johnson. What are we looking at going forward? Because the argument is going to be made by people like Lindsey Graham, by people like Mitch McConnell. You got to let us keep the Senate, because otherwise AOC is going to take over the Senate. She isn't even in the Senate. But that's what they're going to do.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. I think, fortunately, South Carolina is a little different than Georgia. The people of South Carolina decided that they wanted to reelect Senator Reek from Game of Thrones. I mean, he's going to supplicate himself to anybody that he can, right? But I think Georgians are a little bit different. And the idea of Loeffler and Perdue getting into this circular firing squad where they're going to attack the Secretary of State and they're going to attack Brian Kemp. You constantly hear people talk about Dems in disarray. No, this is the GOP in disarray. Because while they're shooting at each other and arguing, you're going to have Warnock and you're going to have Ossoff and you're going to have organizations on the ground, Stacey Abrams getting things together. So the more time they waste fighting each other, the more time it is Democrats can get more people registered and prepared. And I also think with the entire country focused on Georgia for the next 60 or so days, it'll be a lot more difficult to pull off the kind of voter suppression they have in the past, and acting like a Trump supporter in the midst of all of this will just make it look worse.
And give me your theory of the case, Rick. You're great at doing this. So the theory of the case from the Republican side advising Democrats in Georgia right now, it seems like the argument should be, if you don't give us the Senate, you're going to lose your health care. You're not going to be able to get a check for COVID relief because Mitch McConnell ain't going to do it. Like, that seems like the obvious sort of play. What do you think the argument ought to be in terms of getting those two senators?
I think you're very close. I think the argument is fundamentally this. You can make a choice between giving Mitch McConnell 2 more years of Trumpism and the mishandling of COVID. He will train wreck Joe Biden for the first 2 and possibly 4 years of his administration. He will stop aid to families that have been struck hard by COVID, and they're being struck hard now by this second wave of COVID. He will block the appointment of people who would be running administrative divisions of the government, of cabinet seats. We may not get somebody at CDC. We may not get somebody at HHS.
Right.
We may not get somebody at Treasury because Mitch McConnell will stop them.
Yeah.
And the Republicans have already suddenly rediscovered their love of fiscal discipline after spending like drunken socialist sailors for 4 years with Donald Trump. All of a sudden they're like, whoa, we can't do any more of that relief. We can't do that. My goodness.
Yeah.
The red ink is rising.
Yeah.
It's all an act. It's all a con. But the question for Georgia voters is going to be simple. Do you want 4 more years or 2 more years at the minimum of Donald Trump being the handmaiden of Trump, Mitch McConnell, carrying out Trump's agenda and policies and blocking everything Joe Biden's going to try to do to overcome COVID and to restore the economy? Or do you want to give Joe Biden and Vice President Harris their shot?
Yeah.
I think there's a great chance in Georgia for both of these seats because of that chemistry.
Before we go real quick, Jason Johnson, are these 2 seats winnable, both of them? Can Stacey Abrams pull this off, I guess is the real question.
Both of these seats are one. Stacey Abrams, look, I would never bet against Stacey, Latasha, and Nsé Ufot.
Amen.
So I think both of these seats are winnable, and I think both of these things, I think it's going to be a pair. Either both the Democrats win or both the Republicans win. I don't think this is going to be a split ticket.
I agree with you on that. Jason Johnson, Rick Wilson, love having you guys on. Thanks very much. All right, still ahead.
Thank you, Joy.
All right, encouraging news on a potential COVID vaccine, but clearly not in time to combat the ongoing surge in many states. But unlike Donald Trump, President-elect Biden is actually working on the crisis. Stay with us.